What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Meko, joined by my guy Morgan here. And Morgan, we're here to do another top plays breakdown because the Lions, well, they won again. On to the next round, got a chance to play for the NFC Championship, lined up against the San Francisco 49ers this week. But before we get to that, before we start diving into any type of film study and breaking down what the Niners do well and what they probably struggle with, I do think we should still kind of bask in the moment of this game. And I know you got a chance to join like the post game, live stream that Chris and the guys kind of had over on Twitch and everything after the game. But again, a couple days later, how are you feeling about this win? How can you kind of just, how do you kind of break down this game and what it means to you at this point?
I mean, it's like if you're a I'm not even a young adult anymore. I'm 33, right? So like this is the biggest game of my life, and it's been that way for 2 weeks in a row now. And they won both games, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect, but they did it, man. And like you said, Lions won again. Shout out G Mac Cash. Um, but yeah, it was electric being there. My voice is still recovering. It's Tuesday night. I'm almost thankful that we're on the road this week and going to the Bay. But yeah, Miko, I do think it's important to bask in this one. Go over some of these top plays, and because there was a lot of them. Like I was going through the film, and beyond just the splash plays, there were a ton of little things here and there that just missed the cut just because we don't have all the time in the world, right?
No, absolutely. And so before we jump into the tape, like this is the first time I'm actually getting a chance to kind of like talk about it. And I think I'm glad that I like got to take a couple days of like really letting this digest because much like when they won against the Rams the previous week, like there's that initial shock, right? Like, yo, like we finally like got off the snide. Like we're no longer that team that everybody can talk about of like, oh, haven't won a playoff game in this many years. And you and I, again, doing breakdown of Tampa all last week, felt confident in this matchup. And so when I was thinking about it, like, why am I still like somewhat emotional about this win when I was heavily expecting the Lions to win? I thought they should be favored. They were favored by what, 6 or 6.5 at one point. So why am I like so emotional about this? And I like it really kind of dawned on me yesterday when I was really thinking about it. And it's like leading up to this season, even like even on the Pride Detroit website, like there was we had our predictions of like, hey, how do you think the season is going to go? And I would say like across the board for the entire staff, really, we were all positive. A lot of us were in agreement that like, hey, the Lions are going to win the division, that the Lions would get a home playoff game, that the Lions would win a playoff game. I think most of us were in agreement on that. I think where it becomes emotional for me, Morgan, is the realization that everything that you thought was going to happen did happen. And this win over Tampa is just like the cherry, not necessarily the cherry on top, but it's like that extra additional topping that you get on a Sunday where it's like, yo, like I'm already being treated to like one of the best and most memorable seasons of my lifetime. Like you're saying, you're 33, I'm 34. Like I can't think of another time where I've had this much fun watching the Lions. And they've been to the postseason before. But it's almost like validation that everything that you thought about this team, from the coaching staff to the defensive players to the offensive players to the fan base, like everything that you thought this season could be, to see it unfolding in front of your eyes, like it does. It makes you a little emotional because it's like I'm not shocked. I'm just like satisfied with seeing like everything I thought could happen is actually happening in front of me.
Oh, 100%, Miko. Like you look back, and it was almost 3 years to the date that Dan Campbell got hired to when they beat the Bucks in the divisional round, and it was poetic because they did this. Sheila. I love that Sheila Hamp is getting her flowers in the media for the way that she approached this and seeking out help, seeking out the right help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the hiring committee that she formed, and going a little bit unconventional and hiring the GM and Brad Holmes and the coach and Dan Campbell separately, but they had this vision and they saw it through, and it wasn't always perfect. It didn't start perfect last year until they got hot and started to figure some things out. So it really is cool, man. And like being there that night, it didn't really sink in. I was just kind of like in awestruck, and I was like, oh my God, they're in the Final Four. They're going to San Francisco. And I got home and I was on the stream, and it still didn't really sink in. And I think maybe a little bit later this week, like, oh no, they really do. They're gonna the the Chiefs are gonna play
Yeah.
uh, the Ravens, and then the Lions are gonna play the Niners, and whoever wins those games is going to be in the Super. It's crazy to say out loud. Or the Lions are a game away from the Super Bowl, but they really are, and that's why like you said, I think it's important to enjoy this and celebrate it for all it's worth before we turn the page to San Francisco completely.
No, absolutely. So let's do that in this video, right? We have 11 plays, Morgan. 11 plays to kind of break down. And like you said, some of them are big time highlights that we've seen a few times already that definitely led to points or led to turnovers or whatever the case may be. But some of these are a little more, you know, under the radar, but not this play. If he's been doing this the last couple weeks, and between him and the next play that we're going to look at, there's two guys on this team that I think do this better than anybody else on the roster.
Yep, and I'm sure you can probably guess who we're going to talk about besides Iffy the next play. But yeah, I love this because the Lions are disguising things well. And this is, credit to Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, too, because they're doing a good job of making quarterbacks second guess what they see. So that motion with Chris Godwin across the formation, that's supposed to be so Baker Mayfield can ascertain whether it's man or zone and pick up on. It's just another indicator for him. And Ifeatu Melifonwu does a great job of traveling with Godwin and doesn't even, look back into the backfield. And then as soon as the ball snapped, gets his eyes into the backfield and, is screaming off the edge. And it's just a perfectly executed blitz. Hutch does a really good job of attacking like the middle of the chest, like inside shoulder of the tackle, just so he is a little bit more occupied and the tackle can't get out there and chip Iffy. And yeah, this is perfect, right? You were a DB. This is as good as it gets, right?
No, this is absolutely, like you said at the beginning, like to be able to catch a quarterback slipping and being able to, again, trick them into thinking that, they're seeing one type of coverage when they're seeing something else is really tough to do in the NFL. Because again, even if it's not Iffy tipping his hand, one of these other players, the linebackers could have tipped their hands. Kirby could have tipped his hand by moving in a certain way where it's like, okay, Baker could have identified like, hey, I think there may be a blitz here. But because everyone on this defense is so sound, this is why I think this play is able to unravel the way it is. I mean, even Jack Campbell does a great job in the middle of the minute this is snapped. If he gets to come off the blitz, and he does an amazing job of covering up that area where Chris Godwin's kind of running into, where again, is Jack Campbell the person you want covering Chris Godwin? No, but at least he's in the area and in that zone to make that a more difficult pass in the event that Baker had some time.
Yeah, great point, Meko. And it's a tribute to Jack Campbell's athleticism, too, because not many guys are even going to be able to slightly run with Chris Godwin if you're playing the linebacker position. But he's 6'5", 250, and he can run. So good on him. And that, it gives Aaron Glenn chances to be more multiple, just with these pieces like Ifeatu Melifonwu and who we're about to get into next, Brian Branch. I love that guy. Oh, my God. And important to note, after that Iffy sack, the next play was the CJ-GJ pick on 3rd and long. So it means, those sacks, they get you into 3rd and obvious passing downs, and that's when AG can dial up some of these creative blitzes.
Well, and it's another way of just applying pressure, right? I mean, again, obviously you get the sack, but now they're behind the sticks. There's more pressure on being able to convert a 3rd and long. And even though it's early in the game, like Tampa had to go into this game thinking like, hey, we're going to have to keep up with the pace that the Lions offense is going to try and dole out there. But when you have Iffy making plays like that, it makes it more difficult, but it becomes even more difficult when it's not just one guy you have to worry about blitzing off the edge in that manner, but you also have to worry about a rookie in number 32 doing the exact same thing and doing it just as well.
He's just so good at everything, man. The running back, Rachaad White, he does slip, and that makes it easier for Brian Branch, but let's keep it real. Like, even if he does, if he's up there, he's probably only going to slow Brian Branch down just because he's good. He's great at everything, man. And it's not overstating to say he could be an all-pro at nickel, as soon as next year. He's the run fit king already. He's inserting himself into run fits where It's like he, doesn't really even have any business doing it, but it's just he's like like a linebacker essentially that can cover. And yeah, he just does it all. And he was in his bag against Tampa Bay, right, Meko?
Absolutely. I think the thing that like a lot of people forget or just doesn't get mentioned enough, this is a rookie that we're talking about, but like we got to remember that these rookies come into the NFL and they're not in NFL shape. Like even this late into the season, like yes, he's gotten used to like the game, but think about the fact that Brian Branch this offseason is going to get to go into a workout plan and just work on being an NFL pro. He's not going to have to worry about combine. He's not going to have to worry about, how fast can you run or how high you can jump. It's literally just going to be football. So he's only going to get his IQ is only going to skyrocket that much more. His ability to diagnose and cover more space and coverage is only going to get better. There's so much more room for him to grow as a player that I'm kind of right there with you. It wouldn't surprise me at all that by next year, if he's healthy and he's still playing at this level, that we're not talking about BB being an all-pro type of defensive, back in the NFL.
Yeah, excellent point too, Miko. Like thinking of year 2 or year 3, year 4, etc. Brian Branch is a scary thought because, that's a great point, and I can't wait to see, man, because he's a pillar, just like the Penei Sewells and the Aiden Hutchinsons and the Amon-Ra St. Browns of this franchise. Brian Branch is going to be right there with them, in my opinion, because you need this kind of player if you really want to have a high level defense in this day and age, just the way offenses are ran. And the Lions have him, and I'm glad they do. Steal of the draft.
No, absolutely. And one thing I did want to break down about this play, though, right? So we're seeing again this slot blitz from the nickel position. There is like some open space for quarterbacks to be able to deliver the ball, but the thing that makes this such an advantage for the defense is one, like we talked about in the previous play, right? You have your underneath coverage at least dropping into zone far enough to make these throws, a little more murky, right? Quarterbacks can't just fire a pass in there. But again, because the blitz is getting there so fast, even though these are deeper routes that are being, ran, the likelihood that the quarterback is going to be able to set, read, and get the ball out is just non-existent in this situation. So again, we're going to get into like some of the 49er stuff, but like I'm really interested to see how this type of defense plays against an offense like the 49ers that also likes to use motion to be able to determine coverage. But if you can't, if they're again so sound in their alignments, this just becomes more difficult for an offense, right, Morgan?
A couple different times, Miko, they were able to get him off the edge, whether it was Iffy or Brian Branch. They dialed up quite a bit of different, blitz packages where they had the A gaps mugged up. And it was tough for Baker to figure out who was coming and who was dropping. So I expect more of that against Purdy, just because I know he was really good against the blitz this year, though. That's something to consider too. We'll have to get in those metrics once we watch the film, but it definitely it dialed when they dialed it up against the Bucs. It worked more often than not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's change gears a little bit, Morgan. So you said something really interesting when we were talking about Brian Branch about how he's really becoming, one of the pillars for this roster. Well, one of the probably the first pillar, right, that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell was able to acquire for this team is Penei Sewell. And we saw Penei get, rewarded for a lot of his play this year, right? Getting an all-pro nod, getting a Pro Bowl nod. But he's still continuing to just showcase just how dominant he is. Again, not just as a right tackle, but as a top tackle in the NFL. And I think this play that we're about to look at just kind of, sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, and chances are if you've been on Twitter the last couple of days, you might have already seen this just because it made its rounds, but just rare stuff here from Penei, man. They pull him a lot. When they get him in space, that's when he's really cooking in terms of run blocking, but also at the point of attack, he can do it all. He's the best there is. But when he's coming around on the edge, it's cool because that unblocked defender, Penei gives him like a little bit of a flinch, and it slows down. I think that's Tryon, right? The number 9.
Yeah.
And then he gets around and he just kind of flattens poor Jamel Dean, who's a really good player, but get out the way because Sewell's coming through.
Dude, like this play like literally had me out of my seat because Jahmyr Gibbs was a shoelace away from making this
Going,
a house call. Like
I
Levante
know,
David sold his soul to make this tackle, in my opinion.
dude. They were running away from us, and I like sometimes like I'll stand up out of my seat and not say anything, and this was one of those times because I saw it. I was like, if he gets to the sideline, he could go.
Yeah.
Man,
And so like you
yeah,
said though, like this is the thing that again, I'm peaking, right? A little bit towards the 49ers in saying this, but like this is stuff that we see the Niners do with Trent Williams a lot. And when
yeah,
you have an athlete of Panay's stature, like again, you don't have to just run to his side. You can put him into motion. You can put him in those one-on-one situations. And now that, this is kind of on tape, you have defensive ends and corners and potentially safeties that have to be on the lookout because just because he's pulling doesn't mean he's coming to crack down on the defensive end. He could be going out to get the corner or the safety or a linebacker. Like there's so much more to think about when there's these type of alignments. When again, Ben Johnson is able to call up these types of plays.
yeah, Miko, and it's one of the scarier things probably in football. If I had to guess, like you have Panay Sewell barreling down at you, who's got a full head of steam, 6'5", 330 plus pounds. And then you have Jahmyr Gibbs behind him, who might be the most difficult open field tackle in football right now. That sounds like a pretty tough time. So
Yeah,
I
it's
love that. Go ahead.
it's one of those things that you just don't want to see, and it's probably again like
No.
I don't think the Lions had done this like all season. I think this is the first time we've seen it again to this degree where you're not, again, you're not trying to pick up the defensive end on the edge on the end outside of Taylor Decker. Like you're literally just like escorting, Jahmyr Gibbs to as far outside as you possibly can. And because defensive ends are so accustomed to expecting to get chipped or expecting to for that to be like a crackback block on them, they're just like you said, they're going to stop their feet or they're going to try and get in a position to where they can absorb that contact. That's only going to, benefit Jahmyr Gibbs in that situation.
Yeah, like you said, Miko, you're using Panay to block a second level player instead of having that defensive end, and you just have the defensive end running free because Jahmyr is fast enough where it doesn't matter even if he is a really good athlete like Nine was there for Tampa Bay. It just didn't matter because they know if Jahmyr can get the corner, then he's going to go ahead and outrun everybody.
And I think that's really good about that play specifically. Like I believe later in the game they called that play back again, and they did get the defensive end. Like there's again, the ultimate chess match, and that's one of the things that I love so much about football is that we hear Ben Johnson talk about, we hear a lot of the coaches in the NFL talk about this, but this is where it becomes a very mental game between coaching staffs of okay, how many times can I get you with something before I'm able to trick you and get you with something else that you had no idea was coming.
Yeah, and that's where the good play callers like Ben Johnson will start layering things, right, Miko? Like, this look will, it'll look the same pre-snap, but then they're running a play action out of it instead of just handing it off, or, they're turning it into an end around the other way. So yeah, I want to see some more of that. And I like that that's the mark of a good coordinator and obviously a good coach, just knowing what your guys do well and trying to get it as much as possible. And they know if they get Ja to the outside and get him in space, typically only good things are going to happen. So yeah, I love seeing that. Love the design.
All right, so let's move on to the fourth play that we have here. And again, we're going back to the defensive side, and we're once again going to highlight another pillar player, right? In Aiden Hutchinson, who, listen, Aiden's having a really good postseason. Again, showing growth in his game from week to week, but he's like, I think I said this a couple weeks ago when he was able to start picking up more and more sacks. Like he's playing his best football when it matters most. And again, there's no better time to be doing that than in the postseason right now.
Yeah, Miko, earlier in the season, we kind of called on him to, not even called on him. We just said, he probably needs to step up if he wants to be mentioned in the same breath as some of these elite players at this position. So this was cool to see because we've heard time and time again, like the last month or so, about how proficient he is at rushing the passer and his numbers and metrics are off the charts. But this is good because he's comfortable. And again, I talked about it earlier with Aaron Glenn having, a lot of players who can do a lot of things and, giving yourself multiple options in terms of what you can deploy in terms of scheme, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he looked comfortable here. He gets into his drop, quickly identifies what they're doing based on the offensive lineman and what they're doing, getting out into the screen, and is able to break down and make the play. So, yeah, it's good to see stuff like this because he's becoming even more of a well-rounded player, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that we sometimes don't talk about enough with Aiden is the mental side of his game, right? Like obviously, like the thing that we care most about as fans at times is all right, how frequently is he getting to the quarterback, right? Is he getting sacks? Is he getting fumbles? Is he forcing fumbles? Is he doing those things? But these are the heady plays that you also need as well. You can't always have him in situations where he's just pinning his ears back and going after quarterbacks because like you said, teams also know like, hey, that's a guy that generates a lot of pressure. And typically when you throw this type of screen pass, you're hoping that you're getting that entire defensive line crashing down and that you can kind of get some, numbers out there on the secondary. Aiden immediately erases that by understanding his responsibilities, not trying to be a hero and just making the play that's in front of him.
Yeah, and it gives you more wrinkles, right? And having a player like Hutch who can do that, whether he can rush the passer here or he can drop, and it's basically a simulated pressure, right? Because the Lions still rush four, but
Mm-hmm.
the other rusher replacing Hutch was Anzalone on the other side, along with the other three down linemen. So I like that because again, it's almost like the Lions are going to have to continue to compensate just where they're not as strong at cornerback right now with the play of their safeties, and they have four really good useful safeties right now with varying skill sets and a lot of them overlapping too. And then the linebackers have really come on strong, right, Meko? Like the whole unit: Derek Barnes, Anzalone, Jack Campbell, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, and
Yeah.
then Malcolm is still a core special teamer, Rodriguez, and the defensive line's coming along. And if Hutch continues his hot play, maybe you get some useful reps from James Houston here in the next week or two. Knock on wood. So yeah, I like what we're seeing.
And I think another thing that we're starting to see to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying about, again, the other units kind of picking up their play to kind of compensate for the, again, the subpar play that we're getting from outside corner is also just what Aaron Glenn is doing with, again, his alignments, with how he's disguising pressure. We talked about it with, some of the nickel guys, but again, what he's doing with the linebackers, like you pointed out, and what he's doing with the defensive line, those things, when you're starting to make the quarterback and the offense have to second guess what they think is happening in front of them, that does help your secondary out because plays are not happening and developing nearly as quickly. And I think that's a little bit of what we see here in this play with, again, how, Aaron Glenn is able to simulate pressure and make the quarterback and the offensive line have to over communicate to try and determine, okay, who's responsible for who do you think is blitzing and who do you think is dropping? And again, that just kind of, again, slows down everything, I think, for the defense on the back end.
Yeah, and you wonder when you're watching this in real time, how do the Buccaneers let Aiden Hutchinson run unblocked?
Mm-hmm.
But you can see the offensive line communicating here, and I don't know if the right tackle ever just he doesn't get his eyes back out right, or if I don't really know what he sees, but you can tell the confusion where the red circle is what causes this to happen because they're like, oh, there's people standing in both A gaps. You have Barnes, Campbell, and Anzalone all right there near the line of scrimmage, along with Romeo, and I believe that's Kaminsky. So it's just a lot going on, and sometimes you just get lucky, and this is as easy as a sack as Hutch is going to get. So yeah, and you love this because the Lions need to continue to create negatives like this because it gets you into easier and more manageable third downs, right, Meko, where you can get off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing I can think of, Morgan, to your point of trying to like understand, like, okay, how does Aiden get such a clean get off and an easy path to the quarterback? Is I think the offensive line is expecting this to be a quick pass, right? But I
Mm.
think again, the thing that gets kind of overlooked or gets the deception here is like you're saying there's so many guys near the line of scrimmage, and they're trying to determine, okay, it looks like everybody's blitzing here, right? Campbell's going to blitz. Anzalone's going to blitz. Derek Barnes is going to blitz. But Derek Barnes ends up dropping out, and he ends up erasing what I think would have been the easy pass here to Trey Palmer or to Mike Evans on this slant route. And because that immediately gets covered up, Baker has to double clutch that, which gives Aiden the extra step or two that he needs to be able to get this sack.
Yeah, great points, Meko. And a good pass, good rep from Barnes. You know, he showed like he was going to blitz and then ends up getting into his drop. And obviously, there's a big play he makes in coverage later that we're going to finish our video on. So, yeah, it's exciting to see this because players are just developing as the season's gone on, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, like these are the areas of the defense that I think, you know, sometimes get overlooked because yes, they're giving up yards and yes, certain wide receivers are having big games, but they're putting a lot of stuff on tape that I think opposing offenses, again, looking at the 49ers, are going to have to look at and be like, okay, there's a lot of misdirection. There's a lot of simulated pressure and disguised things. Like, how do we as an offense be in tune with those things to be able to you know, clearly identify them? And again, I think next week or this upcoming Sunday, you know, we're going to see the Lions have some success with some of those things, and maybe they'll struggle in some other areas, but at least they know they have the players capable of making plays on the field. And that gets us kind of back to Brian Branch, who you were highlighting earlier, not just for what he does as far as blitzing the quarterback and playing coverage, but also in what he does as far as run support, right?
Oh man, I talked earlier, right, about Meko, about creating negatives, and this is another one. So that the last play we just had where Hutch got the free run and the sack, that was third down. We're back at first down and 10 from the Tampa Bay 40 with about 9 minutes left in the third quarter. And yeah, this is just they're using Brian Branch in so many different ways, and he doesn't tip his hat until late in the cadence, right? So Mayfield doesn't have a chance. The center, Hainsey, or I believe, doesn't have a chance to check the protection. So what happens is he's just a free runner, and it's a big loss. And the Buccaneers are working behind the sticks from the jump.
And that's the thing that makes this a big play, in my opinion, Morgan, right? It's not necessarily like, okay, it's a tackle for loss. What's the big deal? This didn't happen on fourth down. But it's like we talked about earlier. These are the types of plays that apply even more pressure to an offense because you don't get the benefit of working from a 2nd and 6 or a 2nd and 4 or anything like that. You now have to work even further back. So now second down, you know, you're starting to look at some of your third down plays, or you're starting to look at these second down plays to be able to hopefully set up a nice third down play. And again, these are things that I got to give Aaron Glenn credit for being in tune with understanding what his players do well. And this is slowly becoming the calling card of Brian Branch and Ifeatu Melifonwu, is that if they're able to play close to the line of scrimmage, if you're a quarterback, you're an offensive coordinator, you have to start wondering, like, okay, are they going to blitz or not?
For sure, Miko. And it's definitely going to be in Purdy's head and Shanahan's head when they play San Francisco, because they're going to watch this tape and be like, damn, they caused a lot of havoc off the edge here. And it's up to an offensive line to communicate that and to figure that out pre-snap. But the way Aaron Glenn deploys guys like Iffy and Brian Branch, they do a good job of disguising it and just not tipping their hand early, right? And making it difficult and making Mayfield almost have to deal with it post-snap, which is much more difficult typically unless you're a super athlete.
No, 100%. So the next play that we're going to get into, Morgan, I don't know. I may be over exaggerating on this one, but at the time when this play happened in the game, I felt like this was like the biggest offensive play that could have happened in the game at that point. I felt like the Lions really needed to get into the end zone here, and I fully expected Dan Campbell to go for it. It just felt like the right time. The offense was kind of struggling a bit, and they finally got a drive put together where they were able to march all the way down to the 1-yard line. But Craig Reynolds was not the back that I expected to see in the backfield when they called this play. But it's not just, again, Craig being a good runner in the situation. Like you have circled here, the offensive line once again does a really good job of making life easy for Craig in this situation.
Yeah, I was surprised by the personnel. watching this live, I turned to my boy that one of my friends that we sit with, and I was like, man, I'm not even looking. Just tell me what happens. And he's like, I didn't have the heart to tell you that Craig Reynolds was in the game there, but it didn't matter because you just watch both Decker, Ragnow, and Coyote Iwashika. They all get good blocks, man. Decker gets a good double team, and they just end up caving in that side of the line, making it easy for Craig. And yeah, to your point, Meko, this is late in the third. This is a go-ahead score. The Lions needed this one. And this is kind of the start of the Lions really getting the ground game going thanks to their offensive line and the Lions' prolific rookie running back who draft nicks love to hate, but, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Positional value, Morgan. That's all anybody ever wants to talk about whenever we have to talk running backs. But this was like I love everything that you just said about this play, right? You get the great double team from Decker and Awasika. You get a great one-on-one block here between Vita Vea and Ragnow. And I think the only downside from this play is the fact that, Frank got a little banged up on this play. But again, great job of kind of catching the defense sleeping a bit, because I think, the Lions had already thrown it a couple times down here in the red zone. And I think Tampa was probably still kind of expecting pass here in this situation, because you kind of see a lot of their guys just kind of flat-footed when this ball is snapped.
Yeah, and it's probably a little bit of like overconfidence for Tampa. They're like, well, they're not about to. We got Vita Vea in the middle here. We got Levante David. We got this, that, and the other. But the Lions don't care. They think their offensive line is better than your defensive line. And yeah, it doesn't matter if it's Craig Reynolds back there or David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs, the teleporter. But yeah, I can't. Let's get into this next one, Meko. I love this next one here. This is
all right. So yeah, no, let's absolutely jump into this next play, because I think this is the play that's getting the most love, the most attention from this game, specifically offensively. And it should, because like you were saying, people love to find reasons to hate on the Jahmyr Gibbs pick. But these are the plays that he was drafted for, Morgan.
Yeah, this right here, guys. And this was blocked well, but this is just Jahmyr being a super athlete and an amazing running back. You'll see here, it's a good view. His initial cut to get up, to get upfield and get downhill is really nice. And then you'll see when he's just locked on with Antoine Winfield Jr., who I want to tell y'all is an all-pro. Like, he's a first-team all-pro this year. He's a really great player, and Jahmyr dogs him here. He beats him. Winfield has the angle. It doesn't matter. Jahmyr erases it. And then he gives him a nasty stiff arm and just throws him to the ground at the end. I lost.
And early in the season, Morgan, you and I were like talking about comps, right? That people have for Jahmyr. And this is where, for me, like, this is where you see those Jamal Charles type of like comparisons, because the thing that Jamal Charles did so well in open space was to be able to make those one cuts, but it never really break his stride. And that's dangerous, because oftentimes when you see running backs get these situations, but oftentimes there's a breakdown in their approach to where, again, they're chopping their feet a little bit to try and set up the defender. Jahmyr is able to, in these situations, just trust his athleticism, put that foot in the ground, and it's so smooth. It's not very sudden. There's a lot of players that have this one cuts type of style, but again, like, it doesn't always look this lethal in their pack and in the way that they're deploying it in their game.
Yeah, it's such a special play for so many different reasons. They check into this. The line as a whole does a good job of washing their defensive line down the line of scrimmage quite a bit and allowing that cutback lane, that initial cutback lane for Ja. But yeah, it's just a really special play against I can't stress that enough. Antoine Winfield Jr. is one of the best safeties in football. And Jahmyr just makes him look very normal here. And I'm sure he was like, oh my God, this kid is fast. And then he stiff armed me into the nether realm at the end.
Bro, it's bad on top of bad if you're Tampa. But again, like, this was, I think another reason this play stands out so much is that, like, the Lions were having a tough time getting it going on the ground, but it was something I said last week, Morgan. I didn't think they would give up on it. No matter how difficult it was, Dan Campbell will take those 3 yards. If you're only going to give him 3 yards, fine, we'll take them, because at some point in time, we're going to get a big chunk. And that's
Oh yeah.
exactly what happened here with the Lions. They just kept body blow, body blow, body blow with the likes of Montgomery and Gibbs, and it finally broke their way with Gibbs getting into the end zone.
Yeah, and it's just at the end of the day, it's just they're the Lions playmakers making big plays, and gotta have it moments. And just like Ja's 31-yard run there, with 13 left in the fourth, a little bit later in the fourth quarter, I love this next play, Miko. This is huge. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, man, just maybe I'm just so glad he's an all-pro because it's so deserving. But 3rd and 15, the Lions are at the 44, at their own 44, and you really want to sustain a drive here. You don't want to give the ball back to Tampa, and this is just such a special play, right, Miko?
No, absolutely. And this is where I think we're starting to see, for anybody that was keeping tabs on how the Lions were performing in the offseason, where we were constantly talking about, like, hey, no one's covering Saint. Like, no one seems to have the answer to how to defend him. It's plays like this, right, where this is covered really well, but it's just the ability to box out your defender, being able to have strong hands, and then still having the next thing that, again, that can't be measured in players is that toughness and that grit to be able to turn this back upfield to pick up the first down.
He's just so strong. He's a bully, man, which I love. He's just a little like a pit bull of a bully, and I love pit bulls too. My mom has 2 of them. But man, yeah, he's just a bully. And this is a good throw from Goff. You can tell their timing is just perfectly in sync here in terms of that ball being on the money and on time. But yeah, this is a full like 2 yards short, and Saint turns upfield, drags a couple players beyond the first down marker. First down Lions, and yeah, they end up. The next play is we're going to look at is another crazy Saint play that I just love. This got me out of my I was out of my seat a ton this game, but did it get you out of your seat at home, Miko? Because this was beautiful.
Oh, dude, absolutely. Because again, it goes back to, I think there's still like some lingering effects of just like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop in certain situations where you're like, man, this is I expected the Lions to win wholeheartedly. But it's like they are absolutely taking the hard road here in getting this win. And this play was kind of like the one that allowed me to just kind of finally like sink back into my chair and be like, no, we got this. Like there's
Yeah.
no way Tampa's going to be able to overcome this play.
No, and they tried running this variation a couple times, and Tampa was doing a good job being sticky on the outside. But you'll see the red circles, Josh Reynolds, black circles, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and beautiful ball, beautiful placement. Goff throwing it to a spot and allowing Saint to get there. Good little pick play, without overselling it and drawing an offensive pass interference from Josh Reynolds. So worked to perfection. This is the kind of execution you need in the red zone because windows are tighter, as everybody knows, and it's a good play. Pretty good coverage from 27. He's in phase. It's just a better ball from Goff. He was surgical in the second half, and a great catch from Saint. Just running full speed, presenting the hands at the last second so you're not tipping the defender and allowing him to play for the ball. This is perfect, right?
Yeah, I want to also highlight the fact that we also got to remember, like, those 2 plays that we looked at, Jamel Dean wasn't in the game anymore. He had already suffered an injury. So really good job by Ben Johnson of starting to kind of cue in on that and basically saying like, hey, we're going to see if 27 can cover Saint. And you're going to live with those results. And obviously you're going to take Saint in most of those situations. But that's also just, again, being heady and understanding the situation on the field. But I also want to double down on what you're saying. This is a beautiful pass by Jared Goff. We gave a lot of credit to Matthew Stafford last week of being able to throw these types of passes, which are really difficult. You're throwing it almost to the other side of the field, and you have to put so much touch on these. These sometimes are plays that get turned into pick sixes, Morgan.
Yeah, no doubt, Miko. And yeah, he's throwing it from the opposite hash, and he's basically having to drop it in a bucket before Saint gets to the that corner slash boundary back there. So yeah, they do a pretty good job. They don't pass this off. They stay with their assignments, and just a perfect ball. Good offense beats good defense, right?
Oh, 100%. And like I said, like the Tampa had been really good throughout this game, but I'll go back to what I said last week. I just didn't think they would be able to hang for 4 quarters. I thought eventually everything that this offense has available to them from a weapon standpoint was eventually going to just become too much. And we saw that throughout this game. Sam Laporta wore them down. The running game just being there and being present was a constant thing that they had to worry about. JMO had a couple of, again, really like necessary catches at points in the game where, again, it just kept them ahead of the sticks to the point where, again, your defense had to be on the field a lot in this game, that by the time the fourth quarter came around, any defense is going to start to show cracks, especially when they're not forcing a lot of 3-and-outs.
Yeah, and the Lions converted on a lot of those, that 3rd and 15 that we showed earlier to Saint, where he dragged the 2 defenders beyond the marker. That's a backbreaker, to your point, Meko, for a defense. You're like, man, we had a chance. And the Lions have been on the opposite end of that quite a bit this season, giving up some 3rd and 4th down conversions that they probably would like to have back. But at the end of the day, that's football. And when you can convert on some of those, you greatly increase your chances of winning.
100%. And then there's nothing better than being able to seal a win, right? To play a near perfect game and basically, get to the point where, listen, you have every opportunity here to call ball game. And the Lions have done this now. I feel like it's back-to-back weeks, right, Morgan, where they've basically just shut the door on the opposing team and just been like, no, like, we're going to end it here.
Yeah, this was down near our end zone too, and I love so much about this because Derek Barnes, came from Purdue, was an edge rusher there. They're like, no, we're going to make you into an off-ball linebacker. It didn't work right away. There was plenty of bumps and bruises, and this is a perfect play. He gets into his drop, looks at his man, flips his hips, high points the ball. This is a tough catch. No doubter, though. Like, I didn't even sweat looking at the replay. I just knew. I was like, this is a catch. That man snagged that. And, yeah, ball game. And I love that he went back to, in his post-game press conference, Derek Barnes said something to the effect of, Aaron Glenn kept telling them to pack them seams. And if you don't know what he's talking about, the seam is just that middle portion of the field, right? If you're wondering what we're talking about there. And yeah, he packed them seams and made a play, and going to be one of the bigger interceptions in Lions history for a while, right, Meko?
Oh, hands down. And again, I do want to give Baker a little bit of credit here, because if you're looking at the alignment, if you're looking at what the defense is giving you, this is the weak link that you should be looking at of like, okay, I'm going to take Kate Otten against Derek Barnes in this situation. But this is where, like you're saying, coaching, preparation, and technique can beat talent in a situation like this. Kate Otten is a great tight end, but Derek Barnes just does his job perfectly, to the point where, again, this turns into an interception. But even if it had been just a batted down pass, we would still be applauding it, because this is what you expect your defense to do. Everything else that happened in the game to this point doesn't matter, because you're able to get the game sealing interception, and everything else is just moot at that point.
Yep, and to your point there, Meko, it was another really kind of exotic blitz look from Aaron Glenn on that. It was only 2nd and 5 at the Tampa 15 at that time, and the Bucs needed yardage in chunks, and the Lions didn't shy away from being aggressive. And you can tell it definitely hurried. I think it was John Kaminsky who ended up at the feet of Baker Mayfield at that last one. And
yeah,
the ball, it wasn't a bad ball, but everything is sped up, and it allows Derek Barnes to make the biggest play of his career. And you just love to see it, because it almost encompasses everything this team has been about, right? Like, they're just improving, and they're continuing to improve, and they're getting better seemingly as the season goes on. And it's an exciting time to be a Lions fan, and the future looks so bright, and it's amazing.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think Derek Barnes making this play it really does put like a good, one of many bows on this season to kind of explain just like how much and how far this team has come, because Derek Barnes is a perfect example of, like you laid out perfectly, a player that was drafted as one thing and had to take some time to develop into the type of player to be in a situation like this. And the Lions have basically done the exact same thing as a team. Wasn't anything that anyone really was worried about in 2021 developed and started looking and showing signs of being a competitive team in 2022. And then throughout this season that we've just had, just being and reestablishing the fact that, like, no, this is a legit contender. And now we get to play for an NFC championship and have that opportunity to play in a Super Bowl. I don't know how I'm going to be able to handle that day. I think I'm going to be an emotional wreck all day. I've already told my wife if the Lions do win, I'm probably going to go streaking up and down my street because, like,
For sure.
I'm not going to be able to contain myself.
No, man, and I felt that way the last couple times walking out of Ford Field. I'm just like kind of beaming with excitement and just this, like, I want to pinch myself. I'm like, this is really happening, and that's just, and I love the way the team is, right? Like they're just like they're celebrating, they're excited, but it's almost like they expected this, and that's a cool feeling because most of the Lions' young core is still very young and still very much ascending in terms of getting better. And I'm so excited to get into the San Francisco film, and I know we're going to get into that this week with the offensive and defensive videos, but I already can't wait for Sunday.
No, absolutely, man. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this film breakdown of reliving some of the best plays, the biggest moments from the Lions win over Tampa. We're going to be moving on to San Francisco, but at least you had this. At least you had 11 plays to kind of just really, again, relive all those emotions, all those feelings. If you want to see any more content from us or any more content on the Detroit Lions, please be sure to go over to prideofdetroit.com. There's new articles being uploaded over there all the time. Or be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit that notification bell because we're also always uploading content or going live over here on YouTube as well. So, with all that said, I'm Meko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.